Hello everybody and welcome to Chess 24. There's been a lot of chess tournaments recently. One we've covered in some detail but arguably not enough has been the Russian Individual Championship. It was won by a guy called Igor Lysyj, whose name I'm familiar with. I have to say I don't know how to spell it, but he's one of these many strong Russian players which we don't hear or know that much about in the West. However, fortunately, I do have a huge expert we can switch to now on the line who happened to play in that very tournament. Mr. Peter Svidler, welcome.
Hello everybody.
Peter, you're joining us from St. Petersburg, your home?
I'm finally back home after a bit of traveling, which is good, frankly. Been
The
looking forward
tournament
to that for a
ended
while.
yesterday?
You completely disappeared off my...
Have disappeared?
Well, now you're back, yeah.
I should just yell more loudly.
Probably,
So you are back home
yeah.
after a Russian tournament. Russian tournament, I can't speak. Well, we'll keep doing this. A Russian championship where you scored 50%
Yeah,
after winning it 7 times. What's going on there?
not my usual high standard, but since my answer to, a reasonably often asked question, frequently is the word I'm looking for, right? How come I win it so often? I've been answering that question for a while with the law of large numbers. Basically, I've played more Russian championships than anything else in my life, so that should explain it. The same law should explain that every once in a while I should have a really, really bad one. Not that this one was all that bad, but it was sort of less than I expected.
I'm not quite sure. How many times can you have played the Russian championship? Like, let's say you played 15 years, then 7 wins is still pretty good, right?
No, I'm not complaining about the record. It's a pretty decent record. I'm just saying that I have played a lot of these things.
All right. So we'll excuse you for not winning this one, but can you tell us a bit about the winner? Because honestly, I don't know that much about Igor Lysyj. I'll bring up a picture here.
Not that it matters a great deal, but it's Lysyj. The second is not an I either. Not only spelling, but pronouncing the name is, I guess, tricky for people who have only seen it written down. But I don't know him as well as I know most of the other players in the championship. Although this tournament featured a couple of people I've actually never played a tournament game against, which was somewhat surprising considering the normal lineup of this event. I mean, that was my first classical time control game against Boris Grachov as well, and the first game against the eventual winner. But he's been around for a while, and he's a very, very well-known theoretician. I think the thing that people know most about him is that he works very, very diligently and very seriously on chess and on openings. He wrote with, I think, Roman Ovechkin, a very, very well-respected book on the Berlin, which many people seem to enjoy greatly. I personally didn't, because I tried to stay away from the opening, that particular opening, that is, but it comes highly recommended. And he also won the High League, which makes it, I think, an incredible achievement, because the High League, which is a qualification for the Super Final, is an incredibly strong tournament, which features, I probably should have looked this up, but it's a very, very strong open with a huge number of grandmasters, and he won that, and then went on to win the Super Final, which I think is, well, I'm sure is the first such occasion in the history of Super Finals. So, much respect.
Would it be fair to say that the super final is a huge deal for players like kind of second tier, very strong Russian players like Grachev, Khismatulin, Lysyj, but it's not that popular with the stars, right? We didn't have a Grischuk, we didn't have Kramnik this time around.
Well, I don't know. For me, it's always one of the highlights of the year. But people have varying opinions on it, and Vlad obviously preferred to go to Dubai. Although technically he did not qualify, but I'm sure if he expressed a serious interest in playing, he probably would have played, I would suppose. And Grischuk decided to prepare for China, which starts in a couple of days. So that's also his choice. But I wouldn't say the really top players are not interested in these tournaments. But of course, for somebody who only plays in them once in a while, it's a bigger deal. And actually, the top three in this tournament, they all qualified from the High League, which I think is also a first in the history of superfinals.
We have the final standings on the screen here, so it's
those are very, very interesting standings, I have to say. I mean, exactly. You probably were going to mention it yourself, but I mean, it's due to some strange, quirk of the results. The players are incredibly sort of bunched together, and the tie for last is -1, which you don't see every day. Normally, somebody does badly. But in this tournament, the final round featured a game between Grischuk and Lysyj, and had Grischuk won that game, he would have finished third, and would actually have secured participation in the superfinal in 2015. And the way it happened, he tied for last. So was an incredibly close tournament all round.
I believe it also doesn't happen every day that the rating favorite Sergei Karyakin finishes in last place, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting statistical quirk as well. Yeah, but of course he did score only -1. It ended up being the last place, but he didn't have a horrible tournament. Of course, it was horrible by his standards, and not what he expected at all. But as last places go, if you have to finish last, every once in a blue moon, you probably want to do it like this and not with -5.
Fair enough. Then there have been some questions which I have to ask about your love of the move F4, your newfound love.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure it will persist.
Was this the first tournament game where you played one F4?
I can sort of explain my first F4, the one I played on move 1 against Dmitry Yakovenko. And it's not going to be a particularly exciting explanation. Basically, he plays the Berlin against E4, and I played all kinds of other random stuff against him over the course of the past years. I played Knight of 3, I played D4, I played all kinds of things. But he's incredibly well prepared, and also one Knight of 3 is kind of gradually becoming my main opening these days. At least in this tournament, I started my first 2 white games with one Knight of 3, and actually did okay in both of those, but that's beside the point. And what I wanted to get out of that game, by that point I was on -1 for majority of the tournament. It was round 7, and I lost a very important game against Marozovic in round 3. And nobody was running away with the event, so I really needed to try and win that game. And I thought that the best shot I had of doing that in my sort of present condition was to get something which we both knew nothing about. My preparation for the bird consisted of basically deciding at about 2 p.m. with the round starting at 3 to just play one at 4, and then sort of que sera, sera. I did prepare the Dutch for hunting, so having gotten what I did get in the game, I felt reasonably comfortable, because it's just exactly the kind of Dutch I looked at for 2 months before hunting with an extra tempo. But there are other things you can try and do against the bird, obviously.
Concerning that extra tempo, you kind of got the main line of the Leningrad Dutch with colors reversed after Queen E1, Knight C6. And you couldn't find anything better than the move H3. There I was surprised.
The thing is, having played Queen E1, which actually was sort of heavily criticized by Jan Nepomniachtchi afterwards, who was the trendsetter with this thing, having played 1 at 4 against Karyakin in round 2. The thing about Queen E4 is that you're kind of obliged to play E4, having said A, so to speak. But the thing about E4 is that D4, E5 makes the game very forced. And also, Dmitry, after looking at me quizzically, after my first move. He blitzed out all of those moves incredibly confidently, and as I said, he is very, very well booked up. And I had a feeling that for some reason he was actually prepared for 1f4, and it turned out to be the case. I mean, not very well prepared, but he had occasion to look at it in the past couple of months. And I felt that if I play e4, I might not actually get a game. Not that white is worse there, but I just felt that he will just continue making moves without pause for a while, and I probably will be okay, but it wasn't what I wanted. So I spent 15 minutes looking for a pass and came up with h3 because I thought nothing else fits. All other moves which can pretend to be a pass seem to me to be worsening my position actually. So not ideal, and probably something I should have looked at home before the game, but it worked out fine.
What are you gonna do? But you weren't the first to play this f4. Nepomniachtchi played it before you in the tournament, right?
Yeah, he played in round 2 with great success, but Karakin did something really weird against him, to be honest.
Oh, I didn't see that good.
His choice was non-forced, let's put it like this.
1 second, I'll try to find that Nepomniachtchi game. Ah, yeah, there was a game against Karyakin. Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Sergei replied with g6, bishop g7, and then in some random order, c6, knight h6, knight d7, and it's not the reputation of the Dutch even with white, and with black, a tempo less, it really wasn't all that impressive, although he wasn't doing that badly after the opening, slightly worse position.
Yeah, knight d7, and then after c3 not to play c5, I was kind of confused.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't his best effort.
Right. Staying with the 1f4 theme, what drew more criticism from armchair generals like me was your f4 against Svagintsev, because in that game, okay, a bit of an offbeat dragon opening.
Basically, there are some history is needed there. Vadim is very well known for playing this line and then never entering the main theory with, I don't know, queen a5 or d6, knight d4, bishop d7, all those topical things. He always does something weird after castles bishop b3. He started off playing e6 straight away in this position, and then people started figuring out what to do against that. And then I think he came up with the idea of playing rook e8. And that I was sort of half prepared for. But a6 threw me completely, and after f3 e6, which I mean looks a bit counterintuitive if we're completely honest, I just went into a bit of a tailspin, to be honest, trying to figure out how to not get the kind of a position he is apparently aiming for. And there are some positions in which you can play f3 and meet e6 with f4.
So what he's aiming for after you, let's say, castles is to play d5, or what's the idea?
Yeah, I think Vadim's idea is, in general, just to play d5, e5, knight d5, knight d5, e takes d5. This structure, for instance, appeared in a game between Leko and Vitsugov in the European clubs, where rook e8 was played instead of a6. And that kind of isolani, black gets a lot of play because f3 weakens the white setup, and it's not that easy to control the center. But with a tempo wasted on a6, I'm pretty sure that's how you should proceed from there. Because after f4 d6, I honestly wasn't entirely sure I equalized. But we were both sort of not at our best in that game. So by move 16, I was almost winning, I think, objectively.
So after f4, the idea is basically that if he goes d5, you go e5, and you
yeah,
get.
No, I want to not allow this isolani structure at all. But after d6, my major concern was black had a plan of playing knight a5, b5, bishop b7. And if that happens, the pawn on e4 might actually just get lost, because I have no pieces that can protect it. But there are some tactical ways of dealing with it. Without going into too much detail, I was sort of feverishly trying to work out some way to deal with the most direct plans after queen f3. I mean, d6, queen f3, knight a5 was worrying me a great deal. But maybe it wasn't so clear. Maybe I was panicking too much at that point. And the way he played it, we got a very unclear position, and then he played a5 for no real reason, and I was just a pawn up, and The way I played it is okay, but I also could have just played bishop d3 on move 16, and I think I'm just a healthy pawn up. I think from a practical standpoint, it was a much better decision than what I did, actually.
Is it important for you psychologically to win this last round game and finish on 50%? Or are you more like, okay, I'm not going to win the tournament anyway, it doesn't really matter?
No, finishing a tournament without a single win would have been a bit depressing. And also, I still feel it was a bad tournament for me, but when you win the last one, this feeling is, somewhat mitigated. You have this sort of final aftertaste of doing something at least moderately right. So psychologically, I think it does matter. I still will need to wait until the ratings come out to know if I might actually have, for the first time in many years, have to qualify for the next super final, which will be a novel experience.
Well, as I said, for Kremlin, I'm sure if you express a serious interest in playing, there will be a way, right?
I'm not sure. Vlad is a bigger Russian hero, I think, than I am. I think I might actually have to qualify if I don't qualify by rating.